There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another Friday Reads, and I will start with some personal news that may be a bit of a surprise for you all. It certainly was disappointing for me, but I have cancelled our Christmas trip home to Canada at the last minute. We were to fly. I was flying out Sunday, December 19th. It is now December 17th, and I cancelled it 2 nights ago. For the obvious reasons that Omicron is, it was still theoretically possible for us to go with all the border restrictions and quarantine and stuff. It was still going to be possible, perhaps, but it became much too Kafkaesque and onerous for me at my age to think about making such a trip. So, cancelled it. I'll tell you what did me in terms of the Kafkaesque stuff that I would have had to subject myself to. But I think that I mentioned in a previous thing, so I'll get this first part out very briefly, because I've known about this for weeks. 4 COVID tests to go. 1 the day before we go, 1 at the airport in Vancouver, 1 the day before we come back to Tokyo, 1 in the airport. And so I've known about that, plus it was going to be a 2-week quarantine in our apartment after we came back. So I will pick up the story from there, because that was bad enough. That was going to be a pain, and 2 of those PCR tests were going to cost hundreds of dollars each for both of us. Mom and Dad said, we don't care how much it costs, just come. It's been 2.5 years. So what has happened since Sunday? Sunday, my cousin informed me that the rules had tightened up getting back into Japan, and now people that were in Japan was tightening the rules depending on how much Omicron was in the foreign place that you were visiting. And so they had now added Vancouver or British Columbia to the list of regions within Canada where if you were visiting there, and we're just changing planes there, but you would be subjected to the first 3 days of your quarantine in a hotel, government-sponsored, government-appointed hotel, which would be free of charge to you. They'd put you up there and they'd feed you, but you had to stay there for the first 3 days, and then you could go home and finish that 2-week quarantine at home. Well, so here's the part where I don't think I've ever disclosed this. It's not a big secret. I've had no reason to talk about it, but I think I've mentioned that I have a very bad back. I have a herniated disc in my back, which has caused me a lot of trouble for the last 10 years, but the strangest part of it, the biggest impact it's had on me, is that I cannot sleep in a bed. I cannot lie flat without it being extremely painful, so I sleep in some kind of a recliner chair and have for about a decade, and I don't think that will ever change. So, yeah, that's a big thing in my life. So the thought of being in a hotel for 3 days without any kind of specialized sleeping apparatus, sleeping chair, I just thought, oh my God, I have to cancel. But I thought about it for 15 or 20 more minutes and thought, oh, no. I will buy one of those patio recliner lounge things that folds up, and I'll bring it back from Canada on the plane so that I can sleep for the 3 days of hotel quarantine without, because otherwise if I had to sleep in a bed, I couldn't do it, but I'd probably have to go directly from the 3 days of hotel quarantine to the hospital because of my back. So, figured out, okay, just buy one, because that's what I often use when I travel, is something like that. Anything that has a recliner thing, and it's a kind of a lounge type thing, or I sleep here in an electric, very comfortable leather recliner thing. So anything like that. So I thought, okay, it's still doable, no problem. And then Kenji phoned the airport, I think it was on maybe Monday or Tuesday of this week, to just ask some questions about this, that, and the other thing, and they said that we should expect to wait at Narita, the Tokyo airport, for up to 7 or 9 hours to get our PCR test results before we would be allowed to leave the hotel, before they would put us on the bus to go to the hotel. that there's such so many people, so many passengers returning, and so much testing being done that we might have to wait, half a day. 10-hour flight, and then 7 to 9 hours to get the PCR test results. And then, he tells me, they are categorizing so many returning passengers. I mean, right now, Japan is not letting any foreigners in unless you already live here. But people, Japanese citizens or foreign residents, are returning from so many hot spots for Omicron. I mean, in another 10 minutes, the whole world will be a hot spot for Omicron. It's just going to kind of sweep the globe in the next few weeks. But that everybody needs a hotel quarantine almost. So they are busing returning passengers to the Tokyo airport, Narita, to cities 5 hours away from Tokyo. So Sendai, that we had a very, very good chance of having to get on a bus for 5 hours to get to the hotel that they would put us in, because all the Tokyo hotels are booked up. So, I mean, that's ridiculous in one sense, because Tokyo is the biggest city in the world, and then there'd be all kinds of empty hotel rooms, but the government wouldn't want to pay for any of the ritzy ones. But anyway, so it was at that point, the long airport wait and the possibility of being stuffed on a bus for 5 hours before we get to the hotel, and then 3 nights, and then getting bused 5 hours back, and know that they wouldn't take you anywhere near your home. They would take you back to the Narita airport. And then you have to pay $300 for a taxi ride home to your apartment to finish the 2-week quarantine, and blah, blah, blah. So the more I thought about that, the more I thought, you know what? I'm just too old for this, with a bad back and sitting in the airport with uncomfortable airport furniture, and then a long bus ride, and then the 3-day... No. So we have canceled. Plus, right now, it's possible for foreign residents to come back, but who's to say that won't change, and that we would be in Canada and Japan would slam the border shut and we wouldn't be able to come back. So, yes. My cousin Lindsay is still going. She is from Alberta, Canada, and she's willing to do all of that stuff just to see her parents, and good for her. She's young. I'm not anymore, and with my back issues especially, that was just way too much. So, Christmas in Japan, which means no Christmas at all, and I'm not a big fan of Christmas, like I often say. I get into the Christmas spirit by about Christmas Eve, and I'm ready to not hear another piece of horrific Christmas music after Boxing Day, which is December 26th for you non-British people. But won't be really observing Christmas at all. Well, we're going to spend a lot of time with my parents on Zoom, so we'll do Christmas. I think we'll show them their presents, and they'll show us our presents on Zoom, and try to have more than just the weekly hour-long call that we have now, because it's a big disappointment for family. All right, so that is my big news, and I've also had a fantastic reading week. I am just finishing stuff up. So, yeah, wow, have I done a lot of reading, almost all of it really positive, so here goes. Oh, and also been fairly busy on BookTube on my channel, so here's the week in review.
I'm sure the gays loved her. If she was, a cantankerous, elderly lady, we do love those sorts of people.
Is this your strange way of telling me that you love me?
Yes, you're a cantankerous old woman, so yes.
I'll take it.
Dean, how do you feel about not finishing a book? Oh, I thought you'd never ask.
One of those books that I think was probably written on the cusp of social change where, for example, people living unmarried but living together went from being this almost shocking thing you couldn't even talk about to being something that was started to be accepted. And I think the book, is written by someone who'd got beyond that point, but perhaps for an audience who are not quite ready for it. So it's,
very subtle observation. So I have one bail, quite possibly my last bail of the year. I bailed on this Sierra Leonean novel, So the Path Does Not Die, by Pede Hollist, I believe is the pronunciation. That is a male Sierra Leonean writer. What I will say about this, I bailed on page 72, is that the story was really interesting. And it was also about female genital mutilation, and the protagonist was a female protagonist. And I thought that the politics of it, the progressiveness, the sensitivity was really fantastic. But it wasn't literary enough. The characters were not well-rounded, and the writing was not good enough that it just, as a work of literature, it didn't work for me. But I would have liked to have read the same story with the same characters by somebody, with much more of a literary treatment of the subject, because the story itself definitely held my interest in you. And if you don't care as much about prose and character development, I do recommend it just for the story. But you know me, I'm not usually reading for story. So that was my attempt at a Sierra Leonean book for Invisible Cities, and I don't think I'll try to replace it with anything. So that was my bail. I have finished 5 books. The first one was a fantastic novel about abortion from Canada. Just came out earlier this year. We, Jane by Aimee Wall. This was my final buddy read of the year with Britta Bowler. And actually, I'm going to do a digression here. I had thought I'd make a full video about it, but I don't think I will. So I'm just going to make another shocking announcement, which is I am no longer doing buddy reads after 2021, or at least I'm declaring a moratorium on buddy reads for 2022. So, this will be my last buddy read with Britta for maybe forever, but for a long while, and I'm not doing buddy reads with anybody next year. So, I'll talk about that in other videos, but yeah, I love buddy reads. They have enriched my reading life, but they also control my reading life, and I can't say no unless I just do a global no. So it's going to be really interesting to see how my reading life is different next year when I'm not beholden to anybody but me and have no reading schedule. I will be doing a few pseudo-buddy reads where we both read the same book and we talk about it on Zoom, but no check-ins or whatever, and I set the date for the Zoom chat far enough in the future that if it takes me 6 months to read the book, that's great, but I'm only going to do just a handful of those, so I'm just going to be reading for myself. So back to We, Jane. I loved it. It was not a perfect novel, but it was a perfect Sean book, 5 stars. I loved the politics of it, and a bit more than that, I loved the delineation of character. It was so nuanced. And the main character, who I didn't really like, reminded me of myself so much. I've just summarized my self-concept in that last sentence, but I was mesmerized by it. So I am planning to do a full review, and now I got lots of time. So I'm going to do a bunch of reviews between now and the end of the year, and that will be one of the first ones that I film, because that novel wouldn't speak to every reader. Britta really liked it, I think. Maybe she would say she liked it. She didn't like it as much as I did, but I think overall her comments would fall on the positive side. I loved it because it just spoke to me so much about that interstice, is that how you pronounce it? Interstice between social political stuff and character and psychology, and that's what the book was about. It was an incredible read, so stay tuned for that. I'm catching up with my Indigathon reads. I had the best reading month last month because of all my Indigathon, Indigenous fiction and nonfiction. This was one that I didn't finish until yesterday. It's nonfiction. I guess it's a biography of a Métis woman from Western Canada. The Identities of Marie Rose Delorme Smith, Portrait of a Métis Woman, 1861 to 1960, by Doris Jeanne MacKinnon. And it was very academic, but I'm so interested in Métis identity and history, having read that mammoth work of history, The Northwest is Our Mother by Jeanne Teillet, that I enjoyed all the academic sort of theoretical mumble-jumble that was strewn throughout this book. It wasn't really so much a portrait of one woman as using Smith's life and her writings, because she wrote a newspaper column for many years, and her writings and some of her unpublished fictional manuscripts to look at how she coped with having an Indigenous identity on the prairies in Canada up until 1960, and how much she hid her Indigenous identity, even from her immediate family, despite her being 100% Métis. Both of her parents were Métis. and they were very connected with Louis Riel and so on, and she just kept that under wraps for most of her life. And so fascinating exploration of all those issues. I think that if you have to be really deeply interested in indigeneity and Métis issues to wade through the academic writing here, but I got quite a bit out of it. It has since been updated. Doris Jean MacKinnon has now merged this book with a, let's see, what is that called? The new book is Métis Pioneers, Marie Rose Delorme Smith and Isabella Clark Hardisty Lougheed. And so I assume that that's a reworking of the Marie Smith biography and now put together with none. And I may try that at some point, but probably not anytime soon. So I got a lot out of this. I'm not sure that I would recommend it to too many people. Heidi, I think you'd enjoy it, but because Heidi and I read the other Métis history, but it is quite academic. I think you'd find the writing quite frustrating. I have finished the Christmas novel that I read, The Christmas Tree by Jennifer Johnston, and it didn't go well, but it wasn't a deeply negative experience. This was a buddy read with my book buddy, the Irish novelist Ronan Hession, and he suggested the book, and I thought it would be kind of a lark for Sean the Book Maniac, who really kind of hates Christmas, except for that 36 hours right around Christmas, to read a Christmas novel. And this was a very sad Christmas story, so the Christmas part of it didn't bug me, actually, but I didn't like the book. Ronan quite enjoyed it, so his vouching for the book you should consider that, but I just didn't connect with this novel. My first by Jennifer Johnston, but I liked it well enough that I would try something else by her. This was a story about a woman who, within hours of giving birth as a single mother at a certain era, maybe in the 1970s, I don't know when this story was actually set, but it was published in the early 80s. A 40-something woman, or maybe late 30s, who has lived away from her family in Ireland, lived in London. She purposely gets herself pregnant with somebody who she knows is going to disappear, or she's going to disappear on, and so that she may have a child. And then in the maternity ward, within hours, finds out from a blood test result that she actually has a terminal illness. Maybe it's a spoiler to say what it is. I won't say what it is. But she takes her baby daughter home to Ireland, where she has a sister, and she plans to, where she wants to die at home. So she lives in her dead father's house, and her kind of ex-boyfriend, somebody that had asked her to marry him decades before, is the doctor taking care of her, and she's drinking a lot, and she writes a letter to the baby's father and hopes that he might get it because he didn't know the child existed. He wants him to come and pick the baby up and father it now. And all of her memories about her parents and the mother's ghost is in the story, and that was so ineffective. Oh my God, I can now deal with ghosts where I'm not supposed to be scared. The Booker Prize winning The Promise by Damon Galbut had a little bit of a ghost in it, and I've read some other stuff this year, so I no longer have quite the allergy to it, but this time it just was such a cliche kind of technique. I didn't feel that any of the characters, except for the father of the baby, jumped off the page. I didn't feel like the characters really had bodies. Everything was really kind of, the story itself and all the characters were kind of stuck up in their head, so I didn't ever have anything viscerally to grab onto. So I didn't like it, didn't hate it, The Christmas Tree. I have finished that mammoth biography of George III, Queen Charlotte, and their 15 kids. It's called The Strangest Family, The Private Lives of George III, Queen Charlotte, and the Hanoverians by Janice Hadlow. Oh my God, it was just one of the most fascinating royal biographies I've ever read, one of the most fascinating works of history I've ever read. I absolutely loved it. I knew I would. I did. They were so fucked up. Jesus Christ. And I thought it was a very sensitive portrayal of George III's mental illnesses, and that was fascinating because I hadn't really ever read any of the details, and the details are quite poignant, I thought. And their marriage, they had an idealistic project as they started their large family, that they were going to break the Hanoverian curse and actually raise a family of children that they loved, and they were really great parents when all those kids were very small in the nursery. George III would take hours-long breaks every day to play with his toddler kids. But as they grew up, the old Hanoverian patterns reemerged, and it was the most dysfunctional family. I don't think I need to say any more. I just think that I can't imagine a reader, unless you really hated everything to do with history or everything to do with the monarchy, not being utterly gripped by it. Because, oh my God, incredible scandals and secrets and rifts, and I mean, all of it is documented because everybody wrote letters and diaries that are preserved that Janice Hadlow had access to. So, I mean, the minutiae of the enmities. There were parts of it in the last couple chapters where I actually experienced, I was in some emotional pain. It was horrible what many of them had to go through. And, you know, a completely different order of horribleness than, you know, peasants living in the era. I grant you that, but I'm much more interested in reading about the royals than I am about the peasants. Sue me. If you are similarly inclined in your reading tastes, I cannot recommend this more highly, The Strangest Family. It's just in case you run into this, that is the British title, I want to say. I can't remember. It has a different title in the American market. So if you're looking for it, it'll either be under... Yeah, the other title is A Royal Experiment, The Private Life of King George III. And it's the same book. I think that is the British title. Same book. You want to say Merry Christmas on video?
No.
Okay, I'm putting that in. They didn't see your face, just your lips.
Merry Christmas.
There you go. And finally, I have finished what probably could be a contender for my book of the year. It's certainly within the top 5, hands down. This New Zealand Maori novel, Patricia Grace's Potiki. Oh my God, it is right up there. It struck all of the notes that my top read of the year, Tara June Winch's The Yield, hit. The writing in here is so beautiful. The story is so powerfully told. The way that the colonialist, racist politics are woven into a story that so much of this I read with... it's hard to say it without it coming out hokey, but there was a chord being struck, like striking a chord, that's a cliche, but I was reading it from such a deep place. The writing was incantatory. Reminiscent, actually, because that's the adjective that I use to talk about Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, and there's that same incantatory quality to the prose that it just pulled me so deep into the story, and the writing and the characters, and it is a story of Maori people and some stupid white developer wanting some of their land, and they do steal some of the land, but they want the rest of it, and how they resist that. Told with... I'm going to do a full review, so let me collect my thoughts, but this is one of the best books that I read all year, and I can't wait to read more by Patricia Grace, because this is an incredibly powerful, really peculiarly special book that I will never forget. It's a short little novella, 185 pages. I hope I can find some words to put together to do a full review, because this is one of the really special ones. So I'm not starting anything new because I think I'll be really hard pressed to finish up all the books that I currently have. Still in my current reads folder. Let's see, I'm now currently reading 9. So that's the lowest my current reading has ever been. If I make, I've not got very little to do over the next 7 days other than read and make booktube videos. So the chances of me finishing everything up in the next 2 weeks is quite high. If I happen to make a lot of progress in the next 7 days, I may start a few short ones in the final week of the year. I do want to shout out one new channel that I have discovered. He has left comments on mine this week, and I subscribed to him immediately, and I love his channel so much. Initial P, period, P English Literature. And he is a young Nigerian fellow, and his name is Peter. His niche on BookTube is that he reads a lot of self-published really obscure books that don't make bestseller lists. So in a way, kind of a similar vein to mine, although I'm not usually going for new releases that are kind of self-published particularly. But he is a very charismatic, not hard on the eyes, did I say that out loud? And I just really love his channel. So do go check out P English Literature, and P, I guess, maybe stands for Peter. I am delighted by what I've seen so far. And that's it. See you next week. What is that going to be? Christmas Eve? Yeah, I'll see you on Christmas Eve. Some of you might actually be busy doing Christmas stuff by then, but if you really love me, you're going to skip Christmas Eve with your family and watch my Friday reads. Thanks for watching.